In this lesson, you'll learn how to insert audio files and create narrated stories or reports using Adobe Roam. Digital storytelling tool because it allows you to incorporate images, drawings, animations, and audio files in such a way that you can make some really interesting presentations, or your students can, as the case may be. So we're going to be taking a look here at a couple of ways to work with audio files. I've got a little sample project up here. This is my little dog, Sophie. So I want to tell a little story about my dog. It's always a great project for kids. They love to tell about their family members, about their pets, and so forth. So I'm going to have my students, in this example, they would have narrated or recorded their voices already. Now, Roam does not have a built-in audio recorder, but either Windows or Macintosh does have a sound recorder, and you can produce MP3 files that work really well with Roam. Or you can use a free program like Audacity or a nice commercial program like Adobe Audition, depending on the age of your students and how involved you want to get with the audio editing. So I've got my document here ready to go, and the easiest way to insert an audio file is to simply go to the Insert menu, click on File, and browse to the file that you want to use. I've already got mine separated out here into a little folder, so they're all good to go. I'm going to import that file, and you'll see a little tiny speaker icon that appears, indicating that there is an audio file. And if I click on the Preview button, this is my little dog, Sophie. She's a really friendly little dog. Okay, so I get automatic playback as soon as I hit the preview, and that is the default behavior. Now, what about if I want to do something a little more interesting? What if I want my audio playback to play on command or when someone clicks a button? Let's take a look at that procedure. Okay, steps here will allow you to have a play button that plays an audio file when somebody clicks on the button. Makes it kind of interesting, a little more challenging in some ways, but certainly nothing that's beyond what the average student can do. So let's give it a shot. The first thing we want to do is we're going to go ahead and show our timeline. There is one little operation we're going to have to pay attention to that involves the timeline. And then we'll go ahead and use the Insert menu to insert an interactive component. And in this case, we're just going to insert a button. So by default, it's going to be called button. I can double click and get down inside there, and I can change the name of it if I choose to do so. Just double click and get down in there and edit the text. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with that. Next thing I want to do in order to make my audio interactive is I'm going to need a layer stack. So this is going to be found again in the Insert menu under Media Objects. I'll insert my layer stack, and just so I can work with things a little more clearly, I'll drag it over here. It's not really going to be visible, but you do want to know where it is. And then I'll double click inside to open up the layer stack. Layer stack, when you see the breadcrumb trail across the top of the document, you see layers listed in the sidebar, and of course the toolbar actually jumps over into position next to the layer stack here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and insert my file now, and I'm just going to grab the first one that I created. And when working with students, it's going to be a good idea to make sure that you have things named properly. It makes it easier for them to find things. And I'll drag my little object into the layer stack box. It's not really necessary. Just makes things easier for me in this case. What is really necessary, though, is what I find down in the timeline. And I've got to make sure on my timeline that I set my MP3 file here as an independent timeline. Okay, that needs to be an independent timeline. So I do that from the options. Again, the MP3 file itself is what's selected, and I set the MP3 as an independent timeline. Now I'll go back to my sheet and select on my button. I can actually hide the timeline now. I'm not really using that any longer. I'll select on my button, and I want to assign an event to the button. I'll use the button click, and we're going to add the play action. Okay, and what are we going to play? Well, we're not going to play none. We're going to play the MP3 file that's right here. Okay, so relatively easy. Let's review the steps. You insert a layer stack, and then you insert your audio file. On the timeline, set the audio file as an independent timeline. Then, with your interactive object like we have here, we'll go ahead and we'll set the event to a button click, add the play action, and then drill down to the audio file. So when we're all done, now when we play our file, the sound file plays when we click on the button. This is my little dog Sophie. She's a really friendly little dog. Okay, now what's next? Let's add a little animation to the mix. Alright, I got a couple things I want to get accomplished with this particular part of my project. I want to have a button that's going to play an animation and a sound file when it's clicked on. It's going to be a nice visual effect, gives the person who's viewing the project, the story, whatever it is that I'm making, gives them a little control, makes them feel more interested in what they're doing. So I've done a little setup here ahead of time. Let's go run through what I've done already. I added a sheet, and I named my sheet. I named it Dog Kiss. You'll see why here in just a second. Inside my new sheet, I have a layer stack. Inside the layer stack, I have an MP3 file. And remember, the key thing here is I set on my timeline by double-clicking down inside there. I selected on the MP3 file and made it an independent timeline using the timeline down at the bottom. Okay, independent timeline. Now I'm ready to go ahead and I'm going to do my animation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move my playhead down to about 10 seconds. And then I'm going to turn on the animation timer over on the left-hand side. I'll move my playhead down about 5 seconds, and there's my picture of Sophie. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make her much bigger by using the transform button here, and I'll just change the size of the bitmap image there to really make that jump out at you. And there's that big tongue. She loves to kiss people. Now what I want to do is I want to use the timer here really as the controlling element of my playback. So let me slide back here to the beginning of my timeline, and I'm ready now to add the actions to my button. So let's go here and we will go to the events settings, and on a button click we're going to add the action first of all to play the MP3 file. Okay, so there's my MP3 file I want to play. Okay, so the second action I want to take is going to do another button click. I'll add the action, and I want to, this time I'm going to go to a time, and it's going to ask me where. Okay, what time? This is why I wanted to name that sheet. Makes it easier to pick that out. There's my Dog Kiss sheet. And I'm going to look on my timeline and say, oh, I want to go right here to the 10-second time. And I'm going to animate when that happens. Let's see if we got it all together. We'll click on the preview button. So when I click on play, the only thing about Sophie is if you don't watch out, she will kiss you. Okay, I didn't really get the results I wanted. Let's go back, take a look. Maybe we uncheck that animate button. See if maybe that was the thing that we shouldn't have done because that was working before. Let's try it again. There's our play. The only thing about Sophie is if you don't watch out, she will kiss you. Alright, so that is kind of the operation that you would take to make an interactive playback of both an animation and an audio file at the same time. I know you're probably going to want to review this a little bit, but let me run through it really quickly. The animation goes into the timeline as you normally would, but instead of choosing a specific or having it start at the beginning, set the animation further down the timeline. And then you can use your play button to jump to that particular timeline or that point in the timeline at the same time that you're playing your audio file. So you get a really nice little playback that makes that viewer go, wow, what a great job they did on this. And of course, you did it all in Adobe Roam.